Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished and senior professional from San Jose, California, USA, Dr. Prasad Kaipa. Dr. Kaipa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Knowing you a little bit, it's a privilege to be interviewed by you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Prasad is a board member and a thought leader. He's an innovation advisor and a CEO coach, though he puts in brackets retired. He's a co-author of a book, and all of you know I'm always very partial to authors. He's a co-author of a book titled From Smart to Wise. He's also an author of an ebook, which is Discontinuous Learning, Igniting Genius Within by Aligning Self, Work, and Family. So Prasad, before we talk about thought leadership and innovation, tell me about your own amazing journey in brief.
Thank you. I came from Andhra Pradesh, a place called Anantapur. Did my PhD in physics from IIT Madras. Came to United States to work with in physics. Worked with a professor called Professor Luti, and very quickly, circumstantially, I moved into medical school, work on something completely different, and that was the beginning of personal computers in the United States, 1983, 84.
Yeah.
Personal Macintosh from Apple attracted me. Before I know, actually, I was doing so much of work on the personal computers that Apple invited me to come and work for them. So I shifted from physics to computers. I became a research fellow looking at future directions. And as I was looking at AI, I thought we will look at future. That research in 1989 called me to connect with the Indian wisdom, like Upanishads and Sanskrit, because at that time, the expert systems, what we called in AI, was very, very primitive when compared to the current ChatGPT or Bard or anything. So I thought I will do some more research on Indic wisdom. And I got so fascinated, I quit Apple Computer, and then I started applying the Indic wisdom in human development.
Wow.
Just as my own experiments. I thought I will be doing more computer work, but instead I became a management professor and a consultant. So for past 30 years, I was a CEO coach and a management professor.
How amazing. What an amazing journey. And, from physics, and you said you went to a medical school to work there, then you went to Apple. My goodness.
It was a lot of grace.
Absolutely. So, Prasad, let's now talk about thought leadership, innovation, and change management. My first question is, what are the unique cultural, social, and economic factors that influence innovation and leadership? And how can these be harnessed to drive change?
Excellent question, considering that the innovation and leadership are the critical drivers of current economic growth.
Correct.
After the COVID, with the recession, with the war. So right now, if we talk about economic growth or a business success or social change, any and all of them, the innovation and leadership are the drivers. Of course, it doesn't happen in vacuum. They're influenced by a large number of cultural, social, economic factors, as we talked about. So let me start with cultural factors. So if I begin with that, I would say the psychological safety and the job security. These are some things that are driving a large number of people to think about, because during COVID, people worked from home. Now, suddenly, they are asked to come back to work, and they have more resistance to come back to work 2 days a week or 3 days a week, whereas previously they could not even work 1 day a week. But what is happening is when they realize that the organization's innovation was not affected by where employees work from and how they engaged with each other. When they realized that, as a matter of fact, their innovation, their personal creativity, their team effectiveness, some of them are not dependent on location, but on the culture and how they create an environment. That seems to open up a lot of different perspectives on that. So, for example, Google giving like what they call it 20% of time employees can work on projects that they are passionate about. That's how actually the Gmail and AdSense and some of them have come about.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So you can think about similarly the social factors. Similarly, you can talk about economic factors, the market competition or resource availability. If you talk about any of these things, my sense is we need to have a culture of openness. And we need to have a culture of learning.
Correct.
And we need to have a culture of people making mistakes quickly and learn from those.
Correct.
Living in Silicon Valley, I found that is what actually makes many startups become successful, whereas majority of the other things fail. And that is the source of innovation. That's a source of competitiveness.
Well said. Great response. Thank you. So, you spoke about a culture of openness, a culture of learning, a culture of being able to make mistakes. What do you believe are some of the key attributes required to foster such a culture in an organization?
There is a, famous statement from Rigveda. It's called Ano Badra Kratavo Yantu Viswataha. Essentially saying, let the thoughts come from all over.
Correct.
From all over. What does that mean? Essentially, even at Rigveda period, they identified that the thoughts don't come from within. Actually, they are cross-fertilized. That means when we have an essence of openness to new ideas and continuous learning, that allows for what you might call a ability to come up with fresh ideas, ability to deal with failure, ability to have what is called a constructive dissent. So it's okay for people to criticize, constructive criticism. And also I would say things like curiosity, inquisitiveness. And how are people asking? Like, for example, sometimes in India, people ask questions to prove what they know. That rarely leads to any innovation.
Correct.
But if we have spirit of inquiry, spirit of really genuinely wanting to learn, and of course, in any of these things, we need to have safety as the fundamental requirement. If there is no fundamental, if there is no safety, nothing can be done. And finally, I would say diversity of thoughts and ideas. If you have a lot of people who think like you, who look like you, who feel like you, who have same political or religious or spiritual orientation, innovation doesn't get prospered. As a matter of fact, if we have variety of people thinking in a variety of ways, challenging your thoughts, then we will, these are some of the environment, attributes that foster a culture of innovation.
Very interesting. And, you just quoted from the Rig Veda, which is so powerful. And yet there are these, on the one side, the Rig Veda, which is thousands of years old, and we are now talking of ChatGPT and artificial intelligence.
Right.
I wanted to get your perspective on how do you think some of these emerging technologies will impact the future of leadership?
There are 2-3 thoughts that come to my mind when you say that. One is cognitive brilliance and the brilliant leadership. I think that will lose currency very quickly.
Okay.
Because with Bard and ChatGPT and API and all of them, it takes, for example, I can, put in, and within like 10 seconds, I can get 10 talking points if I want.
Correct.
And so the question of how many new ideas, how much of data mining have I done, how much of pattern recognition that I could do, and I could actually gather, I see the pattern forming, that is no longer a major issue. So that will change. So that means instead of cognitive leadership, we need to create a different kind of leadership. So that means thought leadership will lose its premium, but emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, working with people to bring out their unique ideas. Like, you call your podcast The Brand Called You. Like similarly, like in this latest technology with the AI and all the other type of things, the three things that become extremely important are Tattvam. Who are you? Like
Correct.
Prasad keeps on prasading. Asutosh keeps on asutoshing.
Correct.
Wherever you go.
Correct.
Why? Because that is what you authentically are. Your authentic self. How do you present it? How do you formulate it? Number one. Number two, the ethics become extraordinarily important for leaders, because cheating, making all kinds of things, whether you go to court, whether you go somewhere else,
Correct.
like these chat GPTs have passed all the lawyers exams, all the medical exams, all the other things.
Yes.
So they can come up with a case for you anytime or a case against you. So that means as a leader, I have to follow dharma. What is the ethical basis on which I make decisions? What is the ethical basis on which I develop products, treat people? So the emotional maturity, emotional flexibility, the compassion, and the quietness from which I come. Can I come from a deeper, what you might call a quiet, reflective mind that brings certain wisdom to listen to different points of view?
Right.
We talk about Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti being the intelligence. Think about AI being the Prakriti.
Correct.
The Purusha being the consciousness, the Brahman, if you want to call. So the being-centered leadership, when compared to the intelligence-based change. So because we are talking about change management, we need to be the platform on which all the change dances, but we come from the quietness, from the silence. I think that is the most important role that leaders can play.
Fascinating. But I want to now, since you've spoken about the Brahman and you've spoken about so many different aspects of technology, quick question for you. Do you see over a period of time people drawing knowledge from Indic scriptures for the future of the world, which is now evolving towards artificial intelligence?
I certainly hope so. I feel like my journey, if I take, for example, I was very happy to be in the United States.
Right.
And I worked with Nobel laureates. I have written papers both in physics. I have interviewed, I have, worked with about 4 Nobel laureates in coaching, doing work various. What I found though, at some level, is the wisdom, whether you call it from Hinduism predominantly, but there is enough wisdom from Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, some of the... So Correct. If you talk about the Indic wisdom as a whole, has incredible contributions to make as we go forward.
Correct.
Just like Japanese wisdom has made a significant contribution to the quality and the manufacturing movement in 1970s, 80s, and 90s.
Right.
Because of the Deming and Juran and all of them bringing it from Japan.
Yeah.
I have a feeling in the age of ChatGPT, in the age of what you might call a knowledge and wisdom, the frameworks and models of Indic thought. Of course, we cannot take directly the Upanishads and Jain scriptures and Buddhist scriptures. We need to recontextualize them and take the Sanatana Dharma and make it into Nitya Nutana. That means we need to frame it in the language of ChatGPT, in the language of the global, and take away the religious religiosity is from there,
Hmm.
and make them for what is called a practical use, not for spiritual use. My sense is that is very much the need of the hour. I wouldn't be surprised if it in next 10, 20 years, the Indic wisdom will play as much role as some of the Greek and Japanese and other kinds of wisdoms played, because there are so many Indians who are leading organizations, not only in India, but also in the West. And as a matter of fact, with the advantage that we have, a lot of younger people from India, more number of younger people in India than anywhere else in the world, I have a feeling Indic wisdom has an important role around the world as we go forward.
Well said. Well said. The next question I had, and I'm going to, change a few questions because, all your amazing knowledge and Indic wisdom as well. But what are some of the common challenges leaders face when trying to implement change management initiatives? And if you look at our scriptures, change management seems to be the rule rather than the exception.
Yeah.
Whichever way you look at it. And how easily we are able to pivot in our scriptures on different factors. I'd love to get your thoughts.
Sure. Obviously, change by definition will generate resistance.
Correct.
Why? Because change creates fear.
Correct.
Even in Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a particular statement, Bito deti vaityaha. Bita, fear, is the one that allows people to change. Indra, Agni, all of them, Surya, they operate from Biti, fear. So resistance induced by fear of the unknown, fear of the derivatives, is something that actually will affect the change management effort, which we do. So resistance to change, let us take it for common as the most daunting challenge that leaders have to face.
Correct.
So people are very comfortable with status quo. But if you ask them to change anything, so lack of control, perceived lack of control, not really lack of control, because we never had the control to begin with anyway.
Correct.
Or the concern about workload, all of this will make us stay back, like we are wired to certainty and stability. That is one. Second thing I feel like in a change management initiatives, we'll have difficulty is lack of clear communication. Actually, people don't know how to communicate. There is a lot which talks about in the Indic wisdom, talking about sakhitvam, how to speak like the best friend. We also talk about sakshitvam, how to be a witness to yourself as if you are observing as a third person.
Correct.
Right. And then true meaning of kartrutvam, how to be a karta. That means detached from the result, but completely connected with the process. Do the best strategy, do the best thing, but don't be connected with the outcome. Like think about the IPL yesterday, the last ball. Who would have thought actually when the captain comes and tells, till then the bowler was doing quite well. The 4 balls, there was no chance.
Yes.
And the captain comes and tries to tell the bowler, do this, and that ball leads to a sixer, and then next one leads to the boundary, and they lose the game.
Absolutely.
So can you say the leader actually trying to help? He probably was cause of for the Gujarat Titans to lose the game. So what I mean by that is, how do you communicate? When do you need to communicate? When is it necessary? And do people ask for help? When they need it, they will voice their concern. Or they will ask questions, provide the feedback, instead of dumping on them. And the third and the last one I would say is misalignment, both internally, we don't have a kaya, vacha, manasa, we call, between what we say, what we do, what we think and feel. There is an internal misalignment that leads to values gap. Then there is a gap between you and me. You are saying something, but because of my prior experience with you, I will interpret it as something else. Or I asked something because you came to communicate a message, you will use what I asked as an opportunity to give what you want to say rather than what I asked for. So the misalignment between the leader and the follower leads to inadequate leader alignment, inadequate this one. So majority of the time, if the leadership team itself is not aligned, they will start sending mixed messages.
Right.
And that leads to major difficulty and confusion and failure.
Well said. Great response. The other part, and before I ask, I must say I'm very impressed at your knowledge of cricket. I didn't realize after so many decades in the US, you still passionately follow the game.
At least the finals and some of the critical ones.
I know, fantastic. So my next question, Prasad, is that, there is also a lot of discussion in businesses on leaders being able to create a growth mindset.
Yes.
And to create a psychologically safe environment that promotes innovation and learning. I'd love to get your thoughts on how this can get done.
See, the growth mindset is a concept Carol Dweck. She used to be in University of Illinois. Now she's in Stanford. Wonderful person. We interviewed her for our book From Smart to Wise. One of the things which she said really appealed to me. When she said about the growth mindset, when she wrote the first draft of the book, she showed it to her husband. And he said, Carol, you're talking about growth mindset. I thought you are a pretty fixed mindset person yourself.
Okay.
So she was pretty shocked at that. But then the key message that she's communicating through her own book and the whole message about growth mindset is learnable. So it is about continuous learning. It is about getting into a place where I recognize my failure and my resilience are both dependent on my ability to learn from my mistakes. If I seek feedback and if I actually be mindful at this moment, my past doesn't determine my future unless I don't learn.
Correct.
If I don't learn, if I don't have a growth mindset, my past continues to show up in my future. So the growth mindset is critical in terms of, okay, you have asked me this question. I did not think about that. Now, let me slow down and actually look at what are you asking? What can I respond? Can I ask more clarifying questions? Can I actually understand it? Instead of thinking, oh, you're asking me something I don't know, let me look at it and say, why did you ask that question? What makes you think that is important? When I understand and when we dialogue, then it is not important that I gave an answer. But we engaged in a dialogue in which we both learned from each other. That becomes extremely meaningful to develop the growth mindset. It is not about answers at all.
Correct.
It is about learning. What
Absolutely.
have I learned from this?
Absolutely. Very well said. Prasad, we're now running out of time, so I only have time for one more question, and I'm going to seek some more time to discuss your book From Smart to Wise in another episode.
Sure.
But staying with, leadership, innovation, and change management.
Right.
And this question is for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation.
Yeah.
What would you say are 3 lessons you would want a lot of our viewers and listeners to take away?
Good question. So 3 lessons that I could talk about. So you are saying don't bring it from the book perspective.
No, you can bring it from the book also, but we'll schedule another conversation for your book because I think that has got so much to talk about.
Sure. There are 3 things that come to my mind. One is role of emotional intelligence and humility.
Yeah.
Because the conceptual intelligence, pattern matching, all of that is no longer valid with the AI.
Correct.
So how you connect with people, how you treat people, People remember how you treat them, not what you discussed with them. So as a leader, that's important. Second one is humility. So when you are humble, when you recognize I am at the top of the pyramid, that also means I'm a servant leader to you. Like there's a beautiful Tulsi, Ramdas, Tulsi Ramayan. In that, Tulsi Das says, Ramcharitmanas, he says, Hanuman says, if I don't know who you are, I serve you. If I know who you are, I know that then you are not Ram, but you are like Hanuman, like me. Then I am you. So to a certain extent, if I don't know you, I will treat you as Ram and I serve you. If I know who I am, you and I are brothers. So let us work together and let us learn together. So the humility of learning together and dealing with them as a servant leadership, that is the wise leader's characteristic. That is one. Second one I would say is impact of emerging technologies on leadership. Whether it is big data or whether it is machine learning or whether it is digital transformation or AI, they are completely reshaping the business landscape today. So that means they offer incredible potential to augment my decision-making capabilities and how to personalize customer experiences and also increase my, operational efficiency. So, of course, I also need to be worried about how the lies can be propagated very quickly. And the data privacy, people can spam, people can phish, do that. Job displacement. And the ethics, these become this one. And the last one I'll go back to is the wisdom from, as you said, the Indic scriptures for leadership. They offer, because we are moving from information and knowledge to wisdom. Wisdom is about discernment. Yukta Yukta Vichakshana or Vivek, when you call, it is not about how much knowledge you have or how much information you have. But it is about dharma. Even though people translate it as ethics, dharma is actually an appropriate Sanskrit word to bring it into leaders to think about acting with purpose, responsibility, and integrity. All of these are represented by dharma. And detachment. Like a karmanye vadikaraste mapaleshu kadachana. The ability to act out of detachment with respect to results. Because it doesn't matter what you do, competition and everybody else can do a lot of different things. So acting as a karma yogi. And last one is diversity and inclusion. So that people can have inner harmony. So some time ago, we focused on happiness. Now I think it is time to focus on less trauma, more inner peace. Employees' inner peace, the well-being of the employees is at risk. Let us get them to be in a more peaceful state. If we can get them from that state, then the prosperity will increase significantly as we go forward.
Amazing, amazing. And on that note, Prasad, thank you so much for talking to me about your own journey, which has been so amazing. Thank you for talking to me on so many different aspects of leadership, innovation, and change management. Thank you also for talking to me about culture. And I'm grateful that you were able to correlate each of these, if I can use the term, English language management terms with so much from the Indic scriptures. And it just shows more and more to me on how important it is for the world to understand that there is a wealth of knowledge sitting in our Indic scriptures, and people like you are really opening up the treasures of these scriptures to the world. Thank you for speaking to me. I will seek time from you to discuss your book again, and thank you again.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate thoughtful, deep and very relevant, contextually and culturally relevant questions that you have asked. If, like somebody said, we can only speak from the wisdom of the interviewer.
Correct.
Because that is how we dance together. So thanks for, showing a great dance moves. I enjoyed dancing with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.